And also dog-headed creatures. But what's a Wendigo? Well, a Wendigo is an evil spirit that takes the form of a wolf and can attack people for no apparent reason whatsoever. And if you look at an image of the Wendigo, which I'll place here, and you look at the picture of a dogman, the similarities are quite disturbing, but there is still unique differences between the two. For one, the dogman is flesh and blood. Yes, it's possibly an interdimensional creature, and hopefully within the next week or so, we will be having a special guest on, Jordan Heath from America, who will go through the interdimensional theories with us. Anyway, back to what I was saying. The dogman is a flesh and blood creature. The Wendigo is a spirit. And in Native American law, they do feature quite heavily. And it makes you wonder as to why dogmen like to hide in cemeteries, and especially in the trees surrounding them. Well, this is where we get into the paranormal aspect of the dogmen. What is their true purpose for being here? Are they here to protect the dead, the guardians to the underworld or to heaven, whichever one you choose to believe in, or are they guarding portals? The answer to this is very strange. I do believe that dogmen, they follow the ley lines. And for those of you who don't know what a ley line is, a ley line is basically the energy of the earth. And normally you find these around water, which would explain why dogmen like water. And also, if we look at the ley line and the portals and cemetery theory, dogmen seems to have the ability to appear and disappear at will. And it's the same for Bigfoot. For some strange reason, not only can these creatures blend in, like we talked about in Dogman, the real life predator, which I urge you to go and check out if you're new to this channel, but they also seem to just appear and disappear in a puff of smoke. In the coming weeks, we will be talking more about the Beast of Bray Road and the LBL, but I do want to mention quickly the Beast of the Bray Road. If you look at a map of the sightings of the one that the news reporter did, you will see similarities as to where these sightings have happened. They've all been on the old cemeteries of the Native Americans. And many Native American people believe that these dogmen guard their bodies and help their spirits go after death. It's weird. I had a weird experience once under hypnosis where I was coming up into what people would class as heaven, and there was two dogmen walking either side of me. And I think realistically we cannot rule out the spiritual as well as the paranormal with dogmen, because yes, there's the theories out there that they're alien beings, there's the theories out there saying that they belong on this planet as they are the natural inhabitants along with Bigfoot and other cryptid creatures, but like I mentioned in the last video, are dogmen demonic? I don't truly believe they are, personally, and I do personally believe that these creatures, yes, they're flesh and blood, but is it a case they're actually more advanced than we are? To the fact that they can just disappear of their own free will? I believe these questions we need to get out there and explore, because there is so many theories and so many studies going on at the moment and reports coming back which liken this creature, quite a funny metaphor, liken, but that also takes us back to another video, werewolves are not what you think, please do check it out, but it also takes us back to the theory that these creatures are very much flesh and blood, and that they're basically more advanced than humans. And the reason I believe about this one is because if you look at the Anunnaki and how many millions of years ago they lived and how they appeared on the planet, was was this creature already there? If you look in the Bible, in the book of Enoch, it talks of giant creatures, it talks of hybrids. Is it a case that these creatures have been around for as long as we remember, and even before? Is it that they'll have a place in heaven, in the different realms of it? These questions, I would love for your comments to be put down in the comment section below, and we can have a great discussion about this. But to me, if we look at dogmen, it's the same as anything spiritual. As soon as we find an answer to a question, we then find more questions, and then answers, then questions, and it's a never-ending circle. So I think we need to look deeper into this. But also, the Native Americans, they also have something called the Skinwalker. And the Skinwalker is basically one of their witch doctors who's gone bad. And for some reason, he's been given the ability to transform into a wolf. Many people, as well, have theorised that dogmen can change from people into humans. That's one theory, but to me that is complete bollocks. Pardon my language, but it is. Because I personally believe that these creatures are flesh and blood. And werewolves, like we mentioned again, in Werewolves Are Not What You Think, are creatures of the mind. It's basically, like I said, it's a mental disorder. There is no way somebody can physically transform into a wolf. That's why I think personally the Native Americans, I'm probably going to get blasted in the comment section for this, but this is just my personal thoughts and everybody's entitled to their own. I believe the Native Americans over-exaggerated certain parts of it. And they knew of the dogmen, they knew of Bigfoot. So they created stories so they could keep the children out of the woods on a night time or whenever their hunters were around. And this is where they got the story of the Skinwalker from. I'll talk about Skinwalkers in a separate video to this because, to be honest with you, they are very interesting creatures and I do believe they require a video of their own. So, my final thoughts on this are Native Americans connected to dogmen. To a degree, yes they are. I do believe they are, as there is many witnesses and stories going back to their section of history. But do I think that's where dogmen originated from? No. I think dogmen are a lot older. I personally believe in one or two theories, and I'm still on the fence as to which one it is. They're either alien creatures that were put on here to cohabit with humans, or theory number two, which is the most probable, to be quite honest, especially if you look back at history, and also to why the government is covering things up. I personally believe they are real living creatures that are the native species of this planet, and we was put here to coexist with them. And to be honest with you, the government know the truth on this one, and this is why they're covering it all up. I will also do a separate video within the next few weeks as to the government cover-up story. But I'd be interested to know your thoughts. I've been talking for too long. I'd be interested to know your thoughts on what you think about the Native Americans and their connection to dogmen. Up until then, until next time, please be aware of the howl. Hello, and welcome to tonight's episode of Expedition Dogman. My name's Jamie, and I will be your host for this evening. Once again, just a little bit of admin before we start. I've noticed that over 70% of you are still not subscribed, so please make sure to hit that like and subscribe button so we can reach as many people as possible. Anyways, on to tonight's show. I've noticed in the comments recently a lot of people talking about how dogmen are scared off by the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. So I thought I'd make a quick video on this. Dogmen, are they good or evil? Well, as we all know, dogmen are an apex predator. So, as with any living animal, that's if they are actually flesh and blood, please refer back to an earlier video of mine, Dogman, Flesh and Blood. I urge you to check that out. As with any animal, they have different temperaments. Every creature has good and bad in them. But a dogman is slightly different from this. Yes, we all know dogmen are very intelligent creatures, but is there more of a spiritual, supernatural side to this creature? Are they demonic, like we talked about in the previous video? I'm not 100% sure on this. To be honest with you, yes, every creature on this planet knows of the good, the light, the dark and the evil. But personally, can we say for 100% facts that dogmen are evil? No. And the simple facts for this is the fact that there's not a lot of research done on this. And that also goes on to the theory that the government are covering this up. So the question is, why would the government want to cover them up? Simple. To me, the answer is very simple. The dogman is the native species of this planet, and the governments have all sorts of inside knowledge on this. So the question is, why don't they want to share them with us? Well, it refers back to my previous video on werewolves are not what you think. They want everybody to be terrified of these creatures. They don't want people to truly believe in them. They want people to believe that these creatures are mythical, that they belong in legends and folklore of years ago. But they're out there. There is evidence of this. There is evidence to support this. And as we go back to my previous video of Dogmen, the real life predator, we was granted certain images to look at that show us real dogmen hiding in trees. So to me, it proves they are real. It proves, to a degree, they are flesh and blood. But also, we need to take into account the Beast of Bray Road. I'm not going to go on about it for too long, about the Beast of Bray Road. But what I will say is, people who've tried to get photographs of the Beast of Bray Road have only had blurry images. Surely, if these creatures were true flesh and blood, like many believe they are, then there would be amples of photos about this. Same with Bigfoot, for example. People have tried capturing images of these creatures for years, but due to their cloaking abilities, it makes it very difficult for these creatures to be caught on camera. This is why I believe many people believe that these creatures have a supernatural element to them. And this is why more research needs to be done. Unfortunately, over here in the UK, it's coming up to winter time, which makes travelling to certain locations very difficult. So hopefully in the summer months, especially in the spring, we will return to the hauntings and also to the Barmston Drain to try and track down the old stinker even further, and also hopefully to other places. I hope you enjoy that. But anyway, to my final thoughts of this, I'm on the fence about them being spiritual beings. Yes, there is evidence to suggest that they possibly can be, but there is also evidence to suggest that these creatures are flesh and blood in origin. I'd be interested to know your thoughts on this. I'm sorry it's a short one, but to return to this topic, more research will need to be done. So, I thank you once again for listening, and I hope you have enjoyed it. So remember, until the next time, Be aware of the howl.
Hello, and welcome to tonight's episode of Expedition Dogman. My name's Jamie, and I will be your host for this evening. Just a little bit of admin before we start. I've noticed that over 70% of you are still not subscribed to this channel. Please do hit the subscription button below, and also, please do watch till the end, because this tonight is going to be a very fascinating episode. Now, on to tonight's episode in question. Dogmen, are they actually ETs? Well, yes and no. Some people believe that they are, but others don't. But what do I think? Well, like I've said before, I do believe that dogmen and Bigfoot are actually the native beings of this planet. But aliens do have something to do with this. There is an alien species out there known as the Anunnaki, and I'm going to do a special video just on them in the coming weeks. Now, as we all are hopefully aware, the Anunnaki are an ancient alien race that visited Earth over 5 million years ago. And if we look into Charles Darwin's theory of evolution, you have the ape theory. But what's strange about this is that there's bits missing. If you look at an image of Charles Darwin's theory of evolution, you will notice that certain parts are missing. And this all goes down to how we look now. And how did they get us to look like we do now? Well, Bigfoot and dogmen are the native species of this planet. And what they did was is they spliced some genetics off them, spliced some genetics off themselves, and walla bing bang, you have what's known as a human being. Now, as we understand that, why are dogmen related to ETs? Well, some people also believe that dogmen and Bigfoot were put in this planet to coincide with human beings, to see how they would react. Others believe that it's actually the opposite way around, and that dogmen were put here with humans. Now, do I believe that to be the case? No. Do I believe that humans are actually aliens? Yes. There is actually plausible proof of this. If you look at the Egyptian hieroglyphs, for example, you will notice UFOs and dog-headed creatures interacting with each other. Also, looking at this in a bit more detail, it's a bit strange when you look at all the creatures on this planet that none of the rest of them are hybrids. Some people believe that the governments know all about this. Well, yes, they do. The government know the truth. Now, if we look at a dogman, it can run around, as I've said before, on its hind legs and its lower legs, and also on all fours. So, if we look at that, then are they actually alien? Some people believe that these creatures, well, that humans were kidnapped by aliens and that canines were kidnapped by aliens. Putting both together, you get what's known as a dogman. But do I believe this to be the case? No. Because if you look back into ancient history, and Egypt in particular, you've got the ancient god Anubis. And Anubis is a half dog, half man creature. And also, if you look at it this way, people believe that the Egyptian gods were actually aliens that visited this planet. So, does that actually mean then that the Anunnaki have nothing to do with this? It's all plausible theories, and at the moment, that's all it is. Because if we look back through history, the true history of this planet has been hidden from us. So we cannot truly answer these questions. I'd love to be able to. I'd love to be able to turn around and say one way or another whether dogmen are actually the native beings of this planet or not. But for now, it all comes down to personal choice. But what do I believe? Well, personally, like I've said at the beginning of this episode, dogmen are the native beings of this planet. They share it alongside Bigfoot. And then the Anunnaki came. And the Anunnaki, well, they wanted to slave us. So what did they do? They decided to create us in their image. Now, if you look at this, the word Elohim, which is actually in the old Hebrew Bible in its original language. And the word Elohim means the gods made us let's create man in our image. Now, why would it be plural? For the simple fact there is more than one. So let's look at it through story time. Once upon a time, the Anunnaki discovered a planet known as Earth. Now, on Earth, you had several creatures of ape-like origin, and also canine creatures that could walk around on their hind legs. So they decided, well, we need a slave race because we want the gold and all the minerals from this planet. So let's splice DNA from ourselves and from the natives of this planet, and let's put them together. There you go. Created man in our image. Dogmen have been here since the beginning of time, and we will look more on this next week. So stay tuned until then. Be aware of the howl and looking next week as we look at the concluding part of this, hopefully with a special guest, and hopefully next week as well we'll be live streaming. So until then, good night, but don't go to the woods alone. Hello, and welcome to tonight's episode of Expedition Dogman. My name's Jamie, and I will be your host for this evening. Just some admin before we start. I've noticed that quite a few of you are still not subscribed to the channel. Please do subscribe, so that way you can be notified as soon as content becomes available. All you have to do is click the little notification bell when you subscribe. Anyway, on to tonight's topic. Dogmen and their origins. Well, there's many debates throughout the paranormal society as to where dogmen actually originated from. When did they show up in our history? Well, as you heard Cisco say last episode on the live stream, please do watch that, it's very interesting. He said they've been here since the beginning of time. Well, if you look back through human history, these dog-headed creatures keep popping up everywhere. They go back to the very origins of man. So, I'll discuss something first of all that we briefly touched upon in the live stream, and that is the Anunnaki and their involvement with cryptid creatures. Tonight's episode will look mainly at dogmen, but we cannot ignore that Bigfoot and dogmen have similarities throughout history. So, back to the Anunnaki. The Anunnaki, as we all know, came to this planet before humankind even existed. And if you look at a picture of an Anunnaki and of a human, there is great similarities. But, as we all know, they created the human beings. So how did they do this? Well, they used Bigfoot. They took DNA out of Bigfoot, spliced it into themselves, and created the human race. So the question is, why are dogmen able to walk around on their hind legs? That's because they're very similar to how we are. They walk around their hind legs like we do, but they're also a lot more similar to Bigfoot. And if you look at a picture of them both side by side, yes, there's size differences, but I do believe, personally, that they do come from this planet, and that human beings, however, don't. Furthermore, let's look at a picture of Anubis. Anubis, in ancient Egyptology and their history, is a dog-headed god, and we cannot escape to the fact that ancient Egypt is hundreds of thousands of years ago. Realistically, we created time to measure it, but did we get that accurate? No. And I think this is where half the problem stems from. So anyway, moving on. If you look at the hieroglyphs on any Egypt pyramid, you will see dog-headed creatures everywhere, mainly Anubis and his followers. So the question is, where did they come from? It goes back to an earlier theory of dogmen being aliens, or is it a case the human race are aliens, and that we perceive them as aliens because we don't fully know our own history? For me, that is a subject for another time. Anyway, moving on. If you look at Anubis and his followers, they was all dog-headed creatures. and some believe in ancient Egyptology terms that the gods are from this planet. So, and the rest of it is removed from history. So that begs the question, where did we actually come from? But these are all questions for another time. If we look into Greek culture, Zeus cursed a king. He cursed him to be a wolf. So, again, ancient Egypt and ancient Greece were more or less around the same time. There is those that actually believe that Egypt and Greece, their gods interlinked with each other. Same with the Romans. So, if we look at that in particular, dog-headed men have appeared in Egypt, Greece, Italy. So, how are they getting around there? The answer is simple for me. The Anunnaki put them there. And considering they were the native species, they probably did originate from one particular source of the planet, i.e., one particular country, and was then moved around. But until we find definitive proof, we cannot exactly prove this to be 100% fact. This is the problem with this subject. There is more questions than answers. So, moving on. Moving onwards, though, I have been sent some information from somebody called Angie Allen, and she's talking about a creature called Cynocephaly. The characteristics of the Synphosinale, or the Syncophalius, having the head of a dog or a jackal, is widely attested in mythical phenomenon existed in many different forms of context. This literally means Synocophaly is dog-headed. However, that refers to a human body with a dog's head. So, as we're seeing here, these creatures have been around a very long time. Furthermore, it goes on to say, most people have heard of werewolves, but few know of the ancient race of dog-headed men, known as the Cynocephaly. A Synphalius was essentially a man with the head of a dog. They could understand language, but they had no ability to speak. Though they are sometimes depicted in artwork as being civilized, they were, by all reports, savage beasts who lived to hunt and kill. While this may sound like just another mythical creature, there are very good reasons to believe that the Synphosali may have actually existed. These dog-headed men were described in reports by famous explorers such as Christopher Columbus and Marco Polo. The dog-headed men were a fierce warrior tribe, but they also traded with the few humans they trusted. Their teeth were known to be larger than those of dogs, and their nails are also like dogs, but longer and rounder. They don't live in houses, but in caves. They hunted with bows and spears and could run very fast. The women only bathed once a month, and the men didn't bathe at all, only washed their hands. They didn't have fur, but they had tanned and very fine skin. There are very few rich Symphosalis wore linen clothes. They didn't have any beds, so they slept on leaves and or grass. All the Symphosalis had tails above their hips, like dogs, but longer and more hairy. The great explorer Marco Polo mentions the Synphosali indirectly while describing his travels to the island of Angamanian. I'm sorry about trying to pronounce half these words, they're quite foreign to me. But anyway, moving on. The Angamanian is a very large island. The people, without a king and are adulterers, are no better than wild beasts, and I assure you, all the men of this island of Angamanian have heads like dogs and teeth and eyes likewise. In fact, in the face, they are all just like big mastiff dogs. They have a quantity of spices, but they are most cruel generation and eat everybody they can catch, if not of their own race. Perhaps the most famous sympathalist is Christianity's Saint Christopher. Now, this is where we move into the Bible and what the Bible says about them. Anyway, moving on. Saint Christopher, who was described in several texts as having the body of a man but the head of a dog. Not only that, but originally in the future saint was said to have been a wild and fierce warrior who was captured in battle in Cyrenthia. Not only was this creature a very large man, but with a dog's head, but came from a warrior tribe of dog-headed men who looked similar to him. According to Christian mythology, he eventually met Jesus Christ and learnt the error of his former ways. He repented and became baptized and eventually received a sainthood and the gift of human appearance. Multiple historical images show Saint Christopher as having the head of a dog. The great part that moves us onwards to Libya. Now, according to research, Libya is the home of the area of Silencia, and it has been retained to modern times. Now, it's quite spooky to the fact that in the Bible it talks of Saint Christopher meeting him, but does it actually mention Jesus meeting a dog-headed man? We can't truly rule this out. There's a lot of this we cannot rule out. Now, if we go back through history again, the Nowell Codex, perhaps more commonly known as the manuscript containing the Anglo-Saxon epic Beowulf. Here we go, Beowulf. Now, according to the history of Beowulf, which is roughly all of this is happening around the same time, this is what we have to bear in mind. Every culture has its own stories of dogmen, and to be honest with you, they can't all be wrong, can they? But what do you truly believe as to where they're originating from? I can post some of these links in the description below for you to read for yourself. Now, anyway, moving on. Other dog-headed creatures in legend. The Talmud states that at the time, before the Messiah, the face of the generation will have the face of a dog. The Chinese legend of Fuxi includes variations where he has had a dog's head, or he and his sister, Nuara, had ugly faces. In Samoan mythology, according to Craig Calculus, dogface are cannibalistic humanoids with dog snouts. In the United States, there are tales of dog-headed creatures, including the Michigan dogman, the wolf-like beast of Bray Road of West Coniston. Then in England, you have the Wolfia of Shetland in Scotland, Pisnavogog in Serbian mythology. Now, it goes to show, doesn't it, that in each mythology throughout history, these creatures keep appearing. So it goes back to what I said in Werewolves Are Not What You Think. Why? Why have they not shown themselves properly to humans? And not only that, what do the government truly know? Well, this is a two-pronged question. So we'll go with the first prong first of all. Why don't they show themselves to humans? That's simple. Because unfortunately, humans are very sugar-happy creatures. And also, what do the government know? Well, the government have access to all these ancient texts, and this is where the information to what the dogman truly is lies. And to me, it's quite scary to think that these creatures possibly could have been here before us. And that is the origin of the dogman, as far as the information I have been told. But my personal thoughts on this, I do believe they were here at the beginning of time. I do believe that mythology is correct. Because if you look at mythology, there's a three-pronged question to this. Mythology. Fact leads to legend. Legend leads to myth. So if you back that out, it's like any story. A myth goes to a legend, and the legend is always derived from fact. So the problem is that the facts becomes diluted, and this is the problem I think we find, is that the truth of these creatures has been passed from generation to generation, father to son, elders to youngsters, ear to ear, or mouth to ear even, would be the better description of it. And then what you find is the true story gets diluted. So, is there facts into the dogmen go back to the beginning of our lifetime? Yes, there is, because like we've been talking about today, these creatures go back to the beginning of our time, and they were probably even here before us. But the problem is, we're not finding enough proof. So, moving onwards anyway, like me and Cisco were talking about last week, these creatures are flesh and blood. They go back to the beginning of time. So the question is, how are they surviving? Well, that's very simple, really. They're breeding. They're creating pups. There is many reports out there of